You're listening to Transcaster Radio, a podcast about trans life and all that goes along with it. You can listen to the show anywhere you enjoy podcasts, and we'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and give a review. It helps us reach more people, and we greatly appreciate it. Now, here's your host, Caden Taylor.
Is there something interfering with your happiness or is preventing you from achieving your goals? This was the problem for me, and I needed help to change it. PrideCounseling.com will assess your needs and match you with your own licensed professional therapist. I did it in less than 5 minutes. You can start communicating with your therapist in less than 24 hours. It's not a crisis line or self-help. It is professional counseling done securely online. You'll get timely and thoughtful responses, and trust me, I have. Plus, you can schedule weekly video or phone sessions, and you can even do chat sessions, which will keep you from ever having to go into an uncomfortable waiting room again. You can change counselors at any time. I actually had to do that. It was real simple and easy, and it's free. So visit pridecounseling.com/transcaster and join myself and over 500,000 people who are taking charge of their mental health. For listeners of Transcaster Radio, they are doing a special offer. You can get 10% off your first month. Just go to the link pridecounseling.com/transcaster. Hey Transcasters, welcome to this week's episode of Transcaster Radio. I'm your host, Caden Taylor. I've got an awesome guest for you this week, Denise Bowker, an LGBTQ plus activist in the Chicago area. I'm going to let her start by introducing herself.
Good evening, Caden.
How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. And you have pretty much the introduction right. I do some talking at local companies around here, just telling what it is to be transgender and let people meet for the first time a trans person. Some people have never met, or at least not knowingly met a trans person.
When I met another trans person for the first time, I was like, for me personally, being a trans person, I was like, oh my, I'm not the only one, there are other trans folks out there. But how do you feel, like, especially with other like cisgendered folks, how do you feel when you're their first trans person they meet?
Proud and empowering. So when I came out at work in February of 17, I got, a bunch of congratulations, and that's great emails. Everything was positive, by the way. And I got an email from somebody in our Tempe office that said, hey, I'd like to introduce you to somebody who sits in the next building over from you. And basically, it was the other trans woman that was out at the bank that I work for.
Oh, okay.
And she and I became good friends, and she retired right after I came out. So before she retired, I was kind of her shadow, to all the things around the city, just so that I could meet people and et cetera, et cetera. But one of the things we did was a presentation talking about what it is to be transgender, basically Transgender 101. And we gave it to the bank as a whole. And there were probably 50 or 60 people in this large auditorium conference room type thing. And when it's all done, as always happens when you're doing a public presentation, people want to ask you private questions off to the side or whatever. And when the whole thing was done, there was one young person kind of sitting still in their chair, and they weren't coming up and they weren't leaving. And I'm thinking, okay, they have something really personal to say. And when everybody had left, they came up to me and said, thank you very much. Great presentation. I'm next in line. Thank you for blazing the trail.
Wow.
So that is why I do it. That was the first time I did that presentation or anyone like it. And that's why I do these presentations. And I've done, 50, maybe 60 of them in the last 2 years. Yeah, it's probably about right, 1 or 2 a month. And I've had all sorts of comments like, thank you very much. Now I understand what my father went through. Things like that. And it's very empowering knowing that somebody in the audience might get something out of what I'm saying.
Yeah, that has to be empowering.
It is.
Yeah. Just to think that you're putting out the good information too, and, you're educating them. But I mean, I can only imagine how it would feel to have somebody come up and say, I'm the next one. I did work for a company that I was shortly after graduating with my master's degree that had never had a trans person before. And at least that was out or was transitioning in, through work. And so I was actually doing a fellowship, and I was through three different cities, and I started my transition at the first city I was at during the fellowship. So they knew going in that I was going to be transitioning when I got there. And they actually reached out to our local LGBT center here in the area I live and had them come in and sit down and talk to HR about inclusivity and including LGBT, especially trans folks. And they ended up doing training for on trans people. And it was for a county who had over 2,500 employees. So
Wow.
I don't know, obviously it was a big organization. So to tell you if anybody actually came out after they did the training, I mean, I don't know. But just knowing that they were trying to be proactive made me feel good. And, they validated any concerns I had, which was good. So I think getting the information out there, regardless of who's giving it, as long as it's, good information, is great in today's society.
Yeah, that's a very popular way to come out, is that the transitionee goes to HR, and HR says, okay, great, we have no experience with this, let us get back to you. And they bring in a professional trainer that is, knows how to train about trans things.
Yeah.
And then they just meet with everybody in that. Sometimes it's the group, sometimes it's the department, sometimes it's the whole company, depending upon size and, organizational structures and things like that.
I do think I have seen some trans training that's been done by cisgendered people, which is not, I'm not saying that they don't have good intentions. I certainly think that they do. I mean, I don't think they would be trying to put it on, but I do think that the training is better done by a trans person. The current job that I'm in right now, they just did training for trans. They had 2 transgender people come do the training. And earlier this year, I was at a conference where they did a trans training, and it was a cisgendered man. He was a physician, but his training was not as good, I don't think, as the training that I got from work that was given to us all at work for trans people. And maybe it's, I'm a little biased because I'm a trans person, but I just felt like it was the authenticity of it there was more authenticity of it for the whole entire training as a whole. But
yeah, that's interesting, because there's a friend of mine here and a mentor actually of mine that does this training. And goes into police stations, and she stopped doing schools because the training at the schools, the kids are like, we know all this, go away. But at the police department and the local SWAT team and the public service environment, she goes in and does training and is very specific in the training brochures and all the things that in the contract that they sign. They may not mention that she's transgender in any of the advertising material.
Oh, okay.
So what she does is she comes in and talks for 45 minutes, and just to put them at ease, saying this isn't, so the person's trans, I've not been to her training. I really want to go sometime, but it just hasn't worked out. And It's in the last like 5 minutes. And she says, oh, by the way, I'm transgender. And she said you could just see the jaws open up and just people just in shock that, okay, now, all this good information that she gave wasn't tainted by people in the back saying, oh yeah, one of them, and it's an interesting way to do it. I don't do it that way, but she does and gets interesting results. So
yeah, I wouldn't think of that approach, but I bet that definitely does give different, but you're right, that negates the person in the back saying, oh yeah, it's coming from this, a trans person.
Right.
I never thought about it like that, but that's true. So let's just talk a little bit about transitioning. So you came out in 2017.
I came out publicly in 17.
Okay, publicly. When did you realize you were trans?
That would have been October 17th. Well, wait. When did I really know? That would have been October 17th, 2015. When did I suspect? I was about 4.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay. And so I'm late 50s now. So quite a ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
During your childhood, it wasn't a topic of conversation. I mean, let alone being gay, let alone being trans.
Right. So the word transgender, I should look this up, is relatively new term.
Yeah, it used to be transsexual.
Right. So when I was 4, I asked my mom if a mistake had been made and was I supposed to be a girl?
Oh, wow.
And that was, that was in the mid 1960s. And as any good mom would say, she said, no, no.
Yeah.
Why do you ask? And I'm 4. I don't have words to describe my inner emotions and my discomfort. So, I didn't know what to say. So she said, well, just go out and play. And no, a mistake wasn't made. And then lo and behold, 50 years later, I'm sitting in her living room saying, remember that conversation we had? And guess what? So it was.
Well, they do say that children between the ages of 2 and 4 will typically be able to tell you how they identify with their gender.
And I am one of those.
Yeah. Have you dealt with gender dysphoria?
So my case is more of I don't know how to describe this well. And I've been trying to do it for years now. My dysphoria was more along the lines of I should be a girl, not upset that I was a boy. Does that make sense?
Yes, that does.
Okay. So I was never upset that I was assigned male at birth, an AMAB. That never really, there was no dysphoria there. The dysphoria came in that I wasn't female. So when I would look in a mirror, at least from the waist up, I would say, this is wrong. I would not like going outside without a shirt on. That was very uncomfortable for me, even though I knew it wasn't a problem, but I never really liked it. And below the waist was, well, that's just the cards I was dealt, just let it go. So that's where my dysphoria came in. And this little nagging voice in the back of my head for 5 decades saying, wouldn't it be great to be a girl? You should be a girl. It never was anything about, oh, you're a boy. It was always, you should be a girl. So I never felt trapped. You'll hear people say, I felt trapped in a guy's body. No, I never felt that way. I just felt it would be better in that one over there.
I was a child when I realized that I was different and that I thought that I should have been a boy, but I was never, I never hated being a girl. Like, I know people and I have friends and I know there are people out there that just despised being assigned female or male at birth. And I never felt that way. I have always felt that I should have been a male, but I never hated it. I never despised being that way. And I have dealt with dysphoria over the years in different ways, and it has changed as, I started medical transition. Things definitely changed for me as far as my dysphoria. But I have to agree with you. And I haven't heard many people think like we do. Typically, I'm not saying that there aren't others like us out there, but most people just hate that part of themselves. And I don't use dead name as a word for me. I just say my birth name just because I don't feel like that person didn't die to me. So I just changed who I was on the outside and changed my first name, and pretty much that's it. So
yeah, funny you should say that, because I am an open book. I'm an AMA. Ask me anything except what my previous name was. That is
I don't say that either.
That's the only question I will never answer.
Yeah, same here.
And the funny thing was, when I was first coming out, I would experiment with total strangers, telling them that I was trans, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just to see what sort of reaction, and to get my spiel down for the people who really cared. I really needed to come up with a good, so everybody in bars and things like that, they were just my practice group. And wouldn't you know it, if the first person that I told to, the first thing they asked me was, so what was your old name?
Yeah.
And it was then that I realized, that's a question I don't want to ever answer. So
at my current job, I started my job as stealth, and my job is very LGBT friendly. We deal with a lot of LGBT people, especially trans women and gay men. And I had somebody confront me in a very disrespectful manner that I'm not one that lies about who I am. If I don't go out there necessarily and tell everybody I'm trans, but if I'm asked that question, I won't lie about it. So I did tell this person that I was trans, because they flat out asked me in an inappropriate manner, but needless to say, I did. And he proceeded to tell everybody at work. Well, like I said, we just had a training on trans stuff, and they were talking about the dead name, and they talked about it as the dead name. And I had a coworker come up to me that knows that I'm trans and said, "What's your birth name, Kaden?" And I was like, that isn't a question you should ask a trans person. It's none of your business. And no, I will never answer that question, because I think it's a personal thing. I think, I don't call it my dead name, but it's still private. I don't ever want to get called that name. And my birth name has been used to hurt me before. And I don't ever want to give anybody that ability to use my birth name to hurt me. And so I keep it to myself. It's like you. It's the one question that I'm pretty much open book like you. And it's just the one question I won't answer.
Yep, I agree. Now, our reasons for not giving are different. So I won't answer that question because I don't want to give the other person a handle mentally for my maleness, for my previous life. And I love sociology. I wish I should go get a master's in it or something. But so I play cards here in Chicago. There's a game called Euchre that we play up here, and I go to this Euchre club, and I haven't been in quite a while. So I went back, and there were new members that I'd never played with, and they were referring to me correctly with all the female pronouns, and I had a friend that came with me. And she knows my whole history. She's my guardian angel, so she knows everything. She takes care of me in the hospital and things like that. But anyway, I told her to slip with my old name, And after that, the two people that were sitting with us constantly mispronounced me. And she's like, okay, now I understand why you don't say that. It just because it gave the people a handle on my old self. Now, my voice doesn't help. I've got a very...
Mine doesn't either.
Yours is pretty darn good, actually. But mine, I did so many years of radio broadcasting back in my informative days that it's tough to get rid of this cadence.
Yeah.
So,
I had a very high nasally voice, and the longer I'm on T, the lower it goes. But I still, to this day, get misgendered over the phone every single time.
Oh my gosh.
Every single time.
Okay, so do I, but I would not guess that you would. There's no way.
Really?
Yep, not a chance.
Yeah, I and most of the time I do correct people, especially if, there are things that sometimes I don't. But when you see me, like, I don't grow a huge beard or anything. My genes just don't give me that, but I do grow facial hair. So people, when they see me, I present as a male, but when they hear me over the phone, they automatically say, she. And I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but it happened to me in my current work environment that so everybody found out in the clinic that I work at, found out that I was born female. And so I had several employees, even though I had started there as Stealth and they had only known me as Caden and he, him. As soon as they realized I was transgender, they started using she, her pronouns.
Yep, because they had a handle to your past somehow.
Yeah. So, yeah, and that I never even thought about it like that until you mentioned that. And that's interesting because I don't know. I'll have to pay attention to see if I actually do that to other people, whether or not I actually say it out loud or not. But if my mind thinks like that, because I never really thought about it until you mentioned it.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see what you find.
Yeah, I'll have to let you know.
I've never asked somebody who transitioned the other direction if the same thing happens.
Yeah. So you transition later in life.
Yes.
I'll be 34 in September. So my career and everything and life had not quite, developed when I started transition 4 years ago. But you had a life and family and kids and established friends and an established career. How obviously you knew that things could, not that they would, but that they could drastically change for you. How did you feel knowing that might happen?
Okay, so the answer to that is no. I don't think the question is right. So okay. I'm 50. 50, what did I say? 15. So 53. I was almost 54. So, and I'd been worried about this for 50 years. So if I can bury this for 50 years, I can bury it for another 20, 30 years, I can just, and so that's the way my life was supposed to go. What I've found, and I've talked to a lot of other people about this, is that it's kind of like the straw, on the camel's back, and they just start adding, and eventually it's going to break. And what happened to me, the breaking point for me was, butterfly wings. My ex-wife, who by the way, we have a great relationship still. We're still friends. We get together and do dinner and all that stuff all the time. But she just didn't want to be married to me, and I get that. So we divorced. But her brother asked her one day why she wasn't the happy-go-lucky kid that they grew up with, Mm-hmm. And she relayed that question to me, and I was thinking about that for me, on my part. Why am I not the happy-go-lucky kid that I was growing up? And the floodgates opened. I just couldn't stop thinking about transitioning. It was It was terrible. My life, now that was in September, but it wasn't until October that my sister figured out I had to come out and tell somebody.
Yeah.
And I certainly wasn't going to tell my ex. So I told my sister, and she was looking up all these symptoms that I described to her. And she found the definition of gender dysphoria. And one could say that that was the beginning of the end, or the end of the beginning, or what, that was the beginning of my transition. And that was the middle of October of 2015.
How did your family and friends react when you first came out?
So you live and learn. There is no book, transitioning for dummies. It doesn't exist. No. Although I had considered writing one. There are a lot of things that you shouldn't do. I've learned a couple.
Yeah.
We won't go into those here.
Okay.
But one of them is plan ahead a little bit before you talk to your spouse. She was the one that obviously took it the hardest, and she was asking questions, and they were the right questions to ask, I guess. And eventually, it was little over 2 years later that we ended up getting divorced. She saw me through most of the rougher parts of transition. The going through all the doubt and everything, and so that was the rough part. But I had one friend who said, "Oh, not you too."
Oh, wow.
Which was fine, because we're fine. I mean,
okay.
It was just like, apparently they had another friend or, acquaintances that went through it as well. My kids were like, yeah, okay, fine. What's for dinner? Now, my kids were in their mid-20s at the time, so it doesn't really affect them.
Yeah.
Until now, because my son is getting married in 3 weeks.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. Although congratulate him, not me. But
yeah.
So now there are going to be 3 moms and 1 dad, right?
Yeah.
So, and then my daughter just got engaged this weekend, and that wedding is coming up. So now who's going to walk her down the aisle? Which, by the way, was one of the first questions that she asked when she found out that what was going on. She's like, who's going to, I don't remember if the question was, who's going to walk me down the aisle, or who's, what about our first dance or something. So, but the solution to that problem is her brother is going to walk her down the aisle.
Okay.
Which I thought, all right, I like that. Because those two are really close now. Growing up, they weren't, but they are now. And so I'm okay with that. And then as the parent of the groom, yeah, your job is to sit there and look pretty and get out of the way.
Yeah.
So not much to do there. So
I'm getting married in December.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. And
see, now you get the congratulations.
My fiance does not speak to her father. So her mother is actually walking her down the aisle, and my mother and I don't speak either. And my father is deceased. So I'm actually having my first dance with my grandma. So
awesome.
Yeah. We're a little non-traditional. But it's okay. It's going to be perfect for us. So
I think that's great.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. I'm sorry that you've been, you're having trouble with some parents, but
oh, it's okay. It's mine was because I was my mom and I have never really gotten along. But I actually also have 2 siblings that I don't talk to. But it all was because I came out as trans is the main reason why I haven't talked to them in several years. But it's okay. You know what? I've started to make my own family, and my friends are, a big part of my family. I think we create our family. It's not all about blood. So, I've created a family around me and people who support me. And so it's okay.
Good.
So yeah. So and
Good, good.
it's my my dad's side of the family. It's my dad's mom. So so yeah, it will be good. I'm ready, to be perfectly honest. I'm ready for it to come. We've been engaged for a year and a half, and
Oh, wow.
it's she's in pharmacy school full time, and so the burden of wedding planning has been put on me,
Hmm.
and it's stressful.
Yes, it is.
It's stressful. So, yeah, I'm ready for it to come and us to have a good time and it be special. But yeah, I'm ready for it just to be over with. At least the, final planning things be done and kaput. We do have a wedding coordinator for the day, thank goodness.
Oh, good.
So the day of, so she will take care of. So I won't have to worry about anything the day of, which will be nice.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. So, anyways, enough
Wow.
of me.
Oh, okay. So the other thing you asked about coming out at work. So my career
came out in corporate America. I mean that.
Okay, so let me tell you about corporate America. So I have worked for the same company, which is a very conservative financial institution in Chicago. Okay, so Illinois has a lot of laws about LGBT protection. I wasn't worried about that. I would say half of the people that I work with on a day-to-day basis, I have no idea what their sexual orientation is, and I have no idea. People don't care.
Yeah.
I have worked for them since 1987. You were 2.
I was 2 years old.
You were 2 years old when I started there. Okay, so you might imagine I know a lot of people.
Yeah.
So when I came out, the way it was announced, HR had known for, 6 months before I asked them to notify people. And the way I asked them to do it was to attend the chief technology officer's meeting, which my HR rep attended anyway. So that wasn't out of the ordinary. Mm-hmm. And just announce it there that on March, whatever the Monday was in March, I was going to be coming to work as Denise, and that's it. And then so I got all these emails of congratulations, whatever. But I'd already been there at the bank for 29 years.
Yeah.
So I've got all these people now. Do you know it took over a week before the first person, by mistake and didn't realize they had done it, misgendered me?
Really?
I would say I could count on one hand in over 2 years how many people have misgendered me or used my old name.
That's amazing.
2 years, and I'm sure it's less than 5 times.
Wow.
I don't understand. I don't understand how they do it. That's one thing that's really surprised me, is everybody around me has transitioned so much faster than me.
Yeah.
I actually left a voicemail from my niece the other day saying that this is Uncle Yexta, and it's like, and the person sitting next to me on the couch hit me and said, "Did you really mean to say that?" I'm like, "No." Let's hit the star key and try again. Thank God it wasn't. It's fine. I mean, obviously my niece knows who knows me anyway. So, but it was just kind of funny that's one thing I found that surprised me, is that everybody around me transitions faster than I did for me.
Yeah, that's awesome, because that's a rarity. And I mean, I don't know how it would be in corporate America, but I think that's awesome.
Yeah. And the other thing that my company has, and if anybody's listening to this from corporate America or even small company America, when I told HR, the first thing I got back in an email was, by the way, here's the transition guide here at the bank. It was a 10-page document that the bank had set up. In fact, my mentor, who has since retired, worked with the lawyers and got it all set up with definitions and whose responsibility is to do what and what to expect and all this stuff. It was a great document. My manager got it so that she wasn't, confused as to what's going on. and all the steps that needed to occur and things like that. I was aware that, okay, I can't change payroll. I can't change medical, I can't change retirement stuff until I get a legal name change. And then all that stuff will happen as we go along in time. But you can change your email system. You can change your nameplate. You can change, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Get new business cards.
Did you have, through your transition so far, have you had any obstacles at all?
The divorce really hurt. Yeah. And it was more just being single. I had never been single. I mean, we've been married for 34 years.
Oh, wow.
We got married right out of college. So, I'd never really been alone. That is the hardest thing. But other than that, I hit the trans jackpot, the lottery.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah. And I've had only one friend who said, yeah, I'm not interested in maintaining this friendship. I don't know because the next thing they said was, we're cleaning house of a lot of acquaintances, and you're moving to Chicago anyway. So have a good life. Bye-bye.
Interesting.
I was going to, yeah. So I don't know if it was because of the transition, because I moved, because they're cleaning house. I don't know how much of that was, just whatever. So what I'm going to do is, I know his birthday, when that is. So I'm going to send him a birthday card saying, happy birthday. Hope everything is good. And there you go. And see if I get anything back.
Well, we'll see.
We'll see. Yeah, we'll see. But so literally, that's the only thing. Now, I can tell you there have been a lot of pluses. The first plus is I'm still alive.
Yes, you are.
I'm still alive. And if I didn't transition, I probably wouldn't be. So that's a plus. I have also met a ton of great people. Just all new friends, all new circles of people. I've learned so much about myself and about the LGBT community. I've reconnected with so many people from my high school past. It's unbelievable how many people have come out of the woodwork saying, hey, I heard, congratulations, let's get together. And so...
Were you integrated at all into the LGBTQ community prior to coming out?
I avoided the LGBTQ community like the plague. And the reason I did that was I knew if I get too involved, it would be a slippery slope for me. And let's face it, nobody wants to be transgender. It's not something you want to do. And so I knew that if I got involved with it, it would wreak havoc in my mind.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to do that. So no, I driving through Chicago, I would avoid Boys Town and things like that, for example. Now I live just north of it. I can see it out my window.
So let's talk about the advocacy you're doing right now. How did you get involved in it?
So it started with that one presentation that I mentioned that's Sandy and I did, just talking about what it is to be transgender. And it dawned on me that so many people have never had the opportunity to talk to a trans person.
Mm-hmm.
And I am not an introvert, let's put it that way. I will talk to anybody about anything. And so I just started talking to people. And the more and more I just started talking to people, they said, you should really, talk to people, get in front of an audience. So once every couple of months, I would do it at my bank. And then somebody from outside heard that I was doing this and asked. So I've done, a dozen or two different companies. And they just asked me to come over and I do a lunch and learn. What is it, what does it take? And then that got me involved in a bunch of other groups. Like there's who figured this one? There's an LGBT Chamber of Commerce of Illinois.
Really?
Yeah. And they're basically the Chamber of Commerce if you are a more than 50% owned by an LGBT person. It's
interesting.
It is interesting. And I'm wondering how many other states have it. Anyway, so I've gotten to know the CEO quite well. And he asked me to come in and do a presentation there one day. And the reaction I got from that was just, I can still picture the woman who stood up and couldn't ask her question because she was crying so hard. She said, I had no idea. It's just reactions like that will stick with me forever.
Yeah.
And that's how I got involved with this. And again, I talk to anybody, and I've done a number of podcasts like yours, and it's all quite interesting.
I try to get out there and do what I can for the community. And I think, any of us that can put our stories out there or talk about being trans, it like I said earlier, I think it's important. And I think advocacy is I think there needs to be more of it, not just from trans or LGBT folks, but also allies. And I know I do live in a very conservative area. It's a lot of very wealthy people here, and it's not always the easiest to try to get out there and advocate when a lot of the city kind of wants to bash you down. But have you had any of that from your trainings?
The people that try to knock you down?
Yeah.
No, because okay. So one of the things that you keep saying is advocacy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't consider what I'm doing advocacy.
Okay.
I consider what I'm doing educational.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Now there's a subtle difference, and part of the difference is I'm just giving you information. What you want to do with it, I don't care. I mean, if you still want to, rally against trans people, that's your choice. But now you're doing it from an educated standpoint. Yeah. And so, I'm not trying to persuade anybody in anything. My whole presentation just is a run through of my life. This is how I have felt for 50 years. This is what transition has done for me. This is how I feel now. And I am Denise. And I get questions out just question after question after question when it's all over, and all of them are respectful. And I've never had even the first hint of a disrespectful question.
Oh, that's good.
Or comment. I don't know.
Do you think that has to do with where you live?
It helps.
Okay.
It does help. But at the same, and am I speaking into an echo chamber? I don't know. But I can tell you that the last couple of presentations, I actually took a quick survey at the beginning of each one saying, how many of you have ever knowingly spoken with a trans person about being trans? And one person raised their hand.
Wow.
And I said, okay, here's your opportunity. You have a trans person in front of you. Let's talk. And that helps to set the stage as to what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
I don't force down facts and figures. The only fact I force down is 40% of us try to commit suicide. And that's not how many people, think about it. That's how many people actually attempt. And people's reactions to that are like, I had no idea. So,
yeah, that is a stat that a lot of people don't realize.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the only statistic that I give. And well, all right, that's not true. At the very end, I put up a chart that it's a graph chart. It's kind of hard to describe here, but imagine a line going across the bottom and then it shoots up high and then it goes across the top of this chart, right? And it's years across the bottom. And I don't put any labels or anything on it. I just say, okay, so you would look at this and you'd say, okay, this is how many people are transgender. It's, this low number, and then the list, it gets us up higher, and you could look at what are these points that where the line starts to jerk up a little bit, and you'd say, okay, was that Renee Richards back in 70 whatever? Was that Caitlyn Jenner back a couple of years ago? Was it Orange is the New Black? What is it that caused this ramp up? And then I go to the next slide and all the labels come in. And what it's showing is the number of people that are left-handed in the United States between 1900 and 1970. And the reason that this is an interesting graph is in the mid to late 1920s, it was determined that left-handedness was not a mental disease. It's just the way you are.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
And all of these people now identify as left-handed. They didn't have to hide it. They don't have to be ashamed of it. They don't have to whatever. Okay? Along the same lines as gender dysphoria is just the way we are. It's not anything to be, shameful of or whatever. Yeah. So now the numbers are higher. We were always there, but we always just kind of hid it. Now there's no shame in hiding it. Or no shame in coming out.
Yeah, that is awesome. I didn't even know that. So that would have blown my mind if I would have been in your presentation. Oh,
I can send you the chart if you want. I'll email it to you.
And I'll post it when I release the episode. That would be awesome. So I have one question for you to end with.
Sure.
What advice would you have for a trans person out there?
Okay, so there are a number of pieces of advice, and it depends upon where you are in your transition.
Okay.
The first one is go slow. Unless you have some time frame that you have to meet. Well, why do you have a time frame that you have to meet? Make sure that each step of the way, it's a process. Imagine getting on the train, and you can get off the train wherever you want. If you start a little bit and then you can get off, you get back on, you go a little bit and get off and get back on, whatever. Do it at your own rate. The other thing is that once you get over the initial, I'm going to do this, outside of your immediate family, nobody cares. I cannot tell you how many times, every single phone call that I had with my sister. So my sister's the first one. She's the one that figured out what was going on, and she was my rock in this whole thing, which helps to have. But every single phone call that I had with her, at least once, she'd said, and nobody cares. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Yeah. And in the end, other than my immediate family, nobody cares. Do what you want. You're going to get some stares, get used to it.
Yeah.
But nobody really cares. Whatever. And then the other thing that I learned, and this helped me quite a bit, and mostly after I had started, and that was that I would have good days and I would have really bad days. I would have days that I just wanted to pull my hair out, and there are other days when I'm like on seventh heaven. So what I decided to do was whenever I was feeling good, I would pause, think about what I'm doing, and remember that feeling of being good. And I would call that banking it. And I would put it in the bank. I would put it into my mental bank of, this is why I'm doing this. I feel good. Everything is going right. Thank you very much. And on those days that I'm feeling bad, I would take a withdrawal from my bank. And really, you don't really withdraw it. You just kind of remember it. And in time, your number of bad days goes way down and your number of good days goes way up. And eventually, you get to the point where your bad days are way outnumbered by your good days. And then eventually your bad days are, I had one once a couple of weeks ago, maybe, sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And so it gets better with time. It gets way better with time.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I know that, we're opposite. You're a trans woman, I'm a trans man. So our transitions are a little different, but I agree with you. And for me, I held it in so long of being trans that I kind of rushed my, the beginning of my transition. And there's part of me that regrets that. And so I think that's one thing I tell trans people that are just starting their transition is to take it slow and enjoy it, because you only do it once, and, embrace the differences. And I just think that it's special. So you should embrace it and enjoy it well, as you transition. It's a journey.
You're the first one that I've heard to put it that way. But I felt the same thing that it was about 6 or 8 or 10 months ago, that I was sitting here thinking, gosh, I missed when I was first coming out. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And that's all done.
Yeah.
You can't come out again.
No.
Wait, let's do this again.
Let's go backwards.
No.
No.
So.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me tonight. And
sure.
Maybe, I'll have you on again and we'll talk about something else exciting.
That'll be fun.
All right, Transcasters, that's all we have for you this week. Thank you for listening, as always, to this week's episode of Transcaster Radio. Don't forget to tune in next week for another great episode. Until next time, love life, live authentically, and as always, rise up. Hey, Transcasters, I want to tell you about an awesome company I've discovered. I'd Rather Be Naked is a positive mental health community clothing brand that's raising awareness for transgender protection across the globe. I don't know about you, but that's my goal. They do this while living openly and aware of the world. They're always choosing the adventure the universe has to offer, and they're staying aware and grateful of earthly beauties. There is a misconception with being naked, and I had this issue when I first read I'd Rather Be Naked. Nude is actually to be without clothes, and naked is to be open and vulnerable with yourself and the world around you. I just think that sounds amazing. So I want you to go check them out. You can join the conversation on the Facebook group page at I'd Rather Be Naked Compassionate Community Conversation. You can also follow them on Instagram at I'd Rather Be Naked Community to stay up to date. And you can also visit their website at www.I'dRatherBeNakedCommunity.com and grab your gear there. They've also given me a code for you all to get 10% off your first order. So if you go to I'dRatherBeNakedCommunity.com and in the discount code section put Transcaster Radio 10, you'll get 10% off your first order. So go check them out.